Let's make a Knit Lovey by yarnspirations.com. Welcome back to another Yarnspirations tutorial. I'm your host, Kristen Mangus of GoodKnitKisses. Let's get started. Let's make a Knit Lovey today. In this video, you can either make it looking like a little kitty cat, or I'm going to also feature making it into a little owl. This Knit Lovey is made into an owl inspired by I'm a Hoot knit hat. Let's get started. In today's tutorial, you'll need a medium number 4 weight yarn. We're using Bernat Blanket Tiny color Gray Owl. For your accents, you also need a few yards each. For the nose, I'm using Sunflower. For the eyeballs, I'm using Snow Cap. And then I'm going to use Bernat Super Value for the little embroidered eyelashes or squinty eyes on an owl. Use any color that you need. Use a medium 4 weight yarn. If you'd like to make the kitty cat instead of the owl, you will need color Polar Bear for the main color and Sunflower for the head. Let's talk tools. You're going to need a set of 4 double-pointed knitting needles. These are a US number 3 or 3.25 millimeter. You'll also need a set of US 6 or 4 millimeter knitting needles. Now they can be straight or circular. I've got a 16-inch cord on mine. I also have a tapestry needle and a measuring tape, and then you can use a stitch marker or 2 to keep place. Let's jump right into the pattern.
To download your pattern, click on the link in the description below.
All right, let's jump into the abbreviations. If you know how to knit, then you're good to go. You can also knit 2 together and slip slip knit for your decreases if you know those, or if you don't, we're going to cover those as well. There's also knit front and back, we'll cover that as well, and as well as working in the round with double pointed needles. We'll also be working in a flat panel with straight or circular. This is an easy pattern, and it's approximately 12 inches in size for the main body. The gauge is 18 stitches and 24 rows in a 4-inch squared or 10 centimeter squared and stockinette stitch on the larger needles. Now the instructions cover, they start with the head and go on to the next page and finish about here. I actually like to work on the body starting this right here. So let's go ahead and get right into the pattern. So with the body of the blanket, you're going to need a larger pair of needles, and we're going to work in the main color for casting on. Again, mine is going to be all one color for the main body, the blanket, and the head. Now we'll be casting on at 8 stitches and knitting 4 rows in garter stitch, so just knit 4 rows. Then we'll work on the next row and start increasing. We'll show you how to increase, and then we'll increase until 72 stitches or 12 inches. So if you don't have 12 inches, you can just continue to go on until you get the 12 inches, or you can take whatever length it is with the 72 stitches. And if you've got a tighter tension, of course, you're going to have a shorter amount on your needles. You're going to have less than 12 inches. If it's looser, it will probably be closer to this. Now, on the next row, you're going to start the decrease. So you're basically making half of this here. You make the first half, you start at one side and work up to the first, and then the second half is all decreases. It's all downhill from there, and it goes very quickly. And we'll work on this entire thing from cast on to cast off. All right, so let's jump right into the body. We're going to start with the body or blanket with the larger pair of needles, which is the US 6 or 4 millimeter, and the main color. Okay, this is my owl gray. We're going to make 4 rows in garter stitch. So you want to cast on whatever cast on you're comfortable with. I'm going to do the long tail, just pull out a little bit of a tail for 8 stitches. I put the tail toward me and the ball in the back, and I'll do through the first couple stitches slower. So I'm just going to put this right on here. I'm going to split this yarn in my hand, pull back, and I'm going to scoop up between my thumb and go down where my finger is and down where my thumb is, and then let go of my thumb and kind of pull it taut a little bit. Not too tight so that it can still slide, and not too loose so it doesn't slide off. Pull back and scoop up through the thumb, down with the finger, and down where the thumb is, and let go. That's 3 stitches. We want 8 total. So I'm going to do these next several quicker. Pause as you need to. 6, 7, 8. Okay. All right, so let's do the first stitch is a knit stitch. If you haven't made a knit stitch before, you're going to place it in between these first and second stitches and in through that front leg of that stitch. Yarn over, pull through, making a stitch on the right needle and letting the old one fall off. Okay, so you're going to do all the stitches that same way. Knit across, and when you're done with that row, you're going to turn it and knit 3 more rows. So 4 rows total, knit. Pause your video and meet me back up when you have finished the first 4 rows. See you in a moment. Next row is knit 4 and yarn over. So we're going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, and then yarn over is just taking that yarn, wrapping it around your needle, and continuing on knitting. Okay, so we knit to the end of the row, and that is what's called the next row on the pattern. It's also what I call the increase row. So all rows after this are exactly the same. You're just going to take your work and turn it, knit 4, and then yarn over and knit to the end. So knit 1, 2, 3, 4, yarn over, and then that very next stitch after you do the yarn over is the yarn over from the one before on this row here, and we're just going to knit that, and then it makes it a little bit tighter and knit to the end. Okay, and then as you do this, it alternates where that yarn over is. You can see it start to develop here. Okay, and you just turn your work, and eventually it will have little traces of open dots kind of going along the outside. So you are on the beginning of something that's going to increase evenly on each side, and I'll show you a larger sample of that. So continue working on this, and I'll come back in a second here and show you what it will progress like. Okay, so this is what your work is going to start looking like as you go along. It's going to leave these little decorative holes in the side here. So this is the cast on, and then you're just continuing to grow. All right, so you're going to continue this until you have 72 stitches on your needle, and I'll meet you back in a little bit. Okay, you've knit until you've got about 72 stitches on your needles, and I'm going to take my measuring tape out, and I'm going to measure along this side of it, not from the cast on to our needles that are our stitches that are being held up here, but along the edge. And this is about 9 inches, so I'm about 3 inches shy of the 12. I'm actually fine with having a small lovey. This is really, it's for a baby or a toddler to hold her on to. So I'm going to continue going on, and we're going to work on the next row. The next row is where we decrease. So this is the decrease row, if you want to write that in your notes. And we're going to start with a knit 3. So it's just one less than when we started with on the increase row. We're going to do knit 3. So 1, 2, 3. So knit 3. And now we're going to knit 2 together. So we'll take these 2 stitches and go underneath there, a little tight on mine. And we're going to yarn over and knit those 2 together, so that decreases it by 1. Now we want to be able to make this little hole in here, so we're going to increase it, go right here like this, and make a yarn over. And then we're going to knit 2 together as well. So I decreased, and then I'm making that little hole, and so that would mean I would be increasing 1 more stitch, but I need it to be less, and so we're taking it down 1 more notch here. So an increase is going to add 1, okay, and a decrease is going to take 1 away, which would leave us with the original stitch count, but we have to decrease 1 more time in order to get that little hole that happens. And so we're just going to do as we did before, knit to the end. So when you get to the end of your row, turn over and do again the knit 3 stitches, then knit 2 together, yarn over, and knit 2 together, and continue that until you have 8 stitches remaining, and I'll meet you back up at that point. See you in a little bit. I'm at the last 9 stitches here. You can see the main body of the blanket. And we're going to knit 3. 1, 2, 3, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 2 together, and knit 2. So we should have 8 stitches left. Okay, I'm going to turn that. And now you're going to work on the last 4 rows, and these are garter stitch just as the beginning. So just knit across and make 4 rows of garter stitch. And I'll see you back up and we'll cast off together. See you in a moment. All right, let's cast off by knitting the first stitch and knitting the second stitch. Okay. And then we're going to lift the first stitch that we made over the second stitch. So lift that back loop over the front of the tip of the needle and over the top, and you've bound off 1 stitch or cast off 1 stitch. And we're going to knit the next stitch and do that again. So repeat, cast off 2, and go across until you get to the last stitch. Keep going. Pause your video as you need. And we will finish this blanket here. Now the rest of the instructions are telling you to sew the head on, and we're actually going to make the head next. Okay, so I'm on my last one. I knit that last stitch over, and then we're just going to pull this out and go ahead and pop this yarn. You can pop it with your scissors or your fingers. This chenille yarn will just pop just like that, and then we've finished that up. You can go ahead and weave in your loose your strands here. You've got 2 tails at the end here. You can weave those in now or do it later, and this middle part is where your head will go onto, so it will get sewn into this, and we'll do that in the very end. All right, let's move on to the head. All right, now that you've made the body, we're going to work on the head. This is on the first page of instructions, and we'll be working with the double pointed needles. We'll be working with 4 at a time, and we'll be casting on 6 and dividing that evenly over 3 needles. So you'll only have 2 on each needle, and then we'll join in the round. So it can be a little bit fiddly. Just watch the video first before trying it, and then go back and watch it again and pause when you're ready to start working on it. Now, the first and alternate rounds are always knit, and the even rounds are going to be increasing. So we'll be knitting in the front and back and repeating all the way around until we have our stitch count. And then the next subsequent rows are going to be adding 1 on every time and changing a couple of different numbers. We'll go through that. I'll have this off to the side and refer to the pattern. And then we'll be working in even rounds and knitting on and adding a certain length onto it in stockinette stitch. And then we'll shape the ears and do some decreases, and then we'll actually stitch it together, and you have to go over to the next page, and up at the top is the rest of your instructions. We'll work on all this together. Let's get our tools and start in on the head. We're going to make the head, and we need DPNs. We're going to be working in the round, and these are a US 3 or 3.25 millimeter. If you've got metal, they may be a little slippery, so you might want birch or bamboo instead. So I'm just showing you what that material looks like. And then I've got a couple of stitch markers. They're open, so I can just grab them quickly and put them on. You're going to cast on 6 stitches. Okay, so whatever method you like, go ahead and cast that on. Pause if you need to. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. Now, these are very small stitches. It's kind of hard to show you on camera. So I'm actually going to show you this method with a larger needle and with a larger yarn. Okay, so this is kind of its big brother. This is the Bernat Blanket Tiny, and this is the Bernat Blanket. So I'm going to show you what this looks like in the larger size. Okay, let me go ahead and cast these on, and then I'll show you what that looks like in the smaller. 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so we've got our 6 stitches here. Now we're going to pick up our next needle, and go ahead and watch this the first time. Don't try and do this while I'm working through it the first time unless you're familiar with it. Go ahead and pick up with your free needle the first 2 stitches and just let them sit in the middle here. Pick up the next one and pick up your next stitches and then let it sit there, and then you can see how the cast on edge is right here. They're all lined up, and I'm just going to turn it like this, and we're going to join these stitches together. So I'm going to spin this around to where the openness is at the top. I'm going to go ahead and put my tail here, lay it kind of towards me, and the working strand or ball is at the back. Okay, I want to join these 2 stitches, this last stitch here and this stitch here. All right, so we're going to switch these stitches, or actually this is the first stitch and this is the last stitch. So switch them. So I'm going to pick this first one up and hold it in the front, and on your smaller one it's going to be a little harder to do, so you may have to hold it here and put another free needle in it and then hold it together, and then go ahead and pick up with this left needle this stitch here, okay, and slip it on, and then with this needle go ahead and slide it over and come back and pick this stitch up. And now this is where you want to take your stitch marker and place the marker onto the first stitch. So this is where I'm going to mark it, okay? And you're going to work the first row, okay? I'm going to show you working the first row, and then I'm going to pick up and work the other one. Okay, so I'm going to take my free needle, and we're going to knit the first and all the alternate rounds, just knit. All row, the whole round is knit. So yarn over, okay, knit that first stitch. All right, yarn over, knit the second stitch, pull that out. Okay, we'll rotate, take this free needle, go in that first stitch. Okay, gonna yarn over and knit that next stitch. Okay, do it again, the next one. Okay, now knit those 2. Now I'm going to turn around again. I'm going to work on these last 2. So I've only done those first 4 stitches. I'm working on my last 2 stitches on this round. We're going to knit 1 and 2. All right, so that is 1 complete round. All right, so now we've got our first stitch over here. We're back to the first round, and the stitch marker has worked its way to the back, and it's kind of hard to see, but you can see it right there. If you need to, you can take it off and place it at the front again, so where you can really see it. Okay, so now that's where it is. We've got the first round marked. And now we want to go on to the second round. We're going to knit front and back. So I'm going to work this one round here in the larger needles and yarn, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like on the smaller, so you know what it's going to look like for you. I'll just set this aside here. So the first stitch, we're going to knit front and back, and that is an increase, and we'll do that for all the stitches, and we'll double our count here. So we're going to knit, okay, and then spin our needle to the back, okay, just put it all the way to the back and pick up this stitch in the back, okay, and then knit that and come through. Make sure that you're not getting it too tight. You can kind of tug on that yarn, make sure that you've got your tension nice and loose, or it's going to make it very difficult here. And just slide that one off. So you've increased that stitch, and then go into the next one, knit that stitch, don't let it go, go into the back of it, okay, right back here, and we're knitting into the back of the loop. Pull it through. All right, now you can really tell that this was our first needle set that we've done, okay? Go on to the next one. We're going to knit this stitch in the front and the back, spin it to the back, okay, and go to the next one, knit in the front and the back. Again, pause your video whenever you need it. one more to go. It's real easy to tell which one we have left, especially in the very beginning here. We're going to knit into the front of that stitch and then go around to the back. As you can see, I just ignore these stitches. Make sure it's kind of in the middle there so it doesn't fall off. Okay, now knit in the back. All right, and last one. Knit, go to the back, and knit that stitch. All right. So I have not twisted around, I'm not turned it to the back at all. I'm just rotating like this. I'm not flipping my work. So we can see that first stitch again and see how that's really evident now. And you can also see this tail here. Okay, sometimes your tail may fall in here. Try and keep it out here so be able to tell that this is the right side of your work. Okay, now that we've done that, the next row is going to be knit, and so you just knit this all the way around. Go ahead, I'm going to pause my video and I will knit up this first 2 rounds and show you what it looks like on my smaller needles. So what you're watching is a time-lapse video. This is sped up enormously. This really took for connecting the first round and then the second round where the increases happen on the second round. This took me about 7.5 minutes, and that's with me actually knowing how to do it and doing it before. The needles are just very slippery with this yarn, and they're small, and it's also just hard to show on camera, but I didn't want you to go without seeing how I hold them. So this should give you a bit of an idea. Of course, you will not go this fast. That is okay. And again, if you want to use bamboo needles to slow that slip down, that's perfectly all right. Okay, I have knit the first 2 rows. The first one was knit, the second one was the increase, and you can see that over here as well. So now that you've got that going, go ahead and pause your video and do that on your own. And then after that, you're going to knit 1 more row around, not increasing. Pause your video and join me back up for the 4th round. All right, so you've done your 3rd row around, and we're ready for our 4th round. And we will be knitting in front and back, knit 1, and then we repeat that around. So we've already got our 12 stitches, and we're going to be increasing to 18 stitches. So you went from 2 to 4, and now we're going to have 6 on there. I want to show you what it looks like on here. I went ahead and knit that extra round, and then I increased my stitches. So this is what it's going to look like. By the time you get to your 5th round, which is just reinforcing what I'm about to show you, it's so much easier knitting in the round. So if you've been frustrated in the first few rounds, it's okay. You got this. I'm also going to teach you another way to make this knit in front and back, 2 different ways in case you're having a little bit of a hard time. Okay, so we're going to knit front and back here, this first stitch. Okay, so you knit 1 and then come around to the back. And let's say you're having a hard time picking this stitch up. Maybe you just can't get that in there on that smaller yarn. You can also slip this stitch over like this. Okay, and then put your stitch and put your needle in the front of this stitch, pick it up that way, and then now you're positioned the right way to go ahead and knit that stitch. Okay, so that makes it exactly the same way. Now we're going to knit 1, so we knit front and back and knit 1, and now we need to repeat that all the way in the round. So this is knit front and back, so knit front, and then we go to the back and pick it up. And then another way you can knit front and back is not actually to knit the back stitch. You can just lift it off and over like that as long as it's positioned correctly. So it'll be a little bit tighter, but you can do that if you're having a hard time. But you want to be consistent in the way that you're doing it. I would rather just go ahead and knit in the back and make them all consistent. But again, that's another alternate way to do it. All right, and so I knit 1. Okay. And then that needle now has 6 stitches on it. We've increased from 4 to 6 stitches. We're going to move on to the next stitch here and knit front and back, and we're just going to increase this all the way around like this, and knit 1, knit front and back, and knit 1. So continue all the way around for the 4th round. And then make the 5th round in all knit stitches. Okay, Pause your video and I'll meet you back in a little bit. We've knit our 5th round all the way, and I've got another stitch marker here. I'm going to show you how I'm going to make use of that. The 6th round is going to knit front and back, just as the last round, except we're going to knit 2 after that. So after we've done knit front and back, we're going to knit 1 and knit 2. And then just on this first needle that we're going to work on, where our stitch marker lines up here, I'm going to go ahead and place on a second stitch marker. And this doesn't have to be a removable one. It doesn't have to be able to open. I'm just going to slide that right on there and leave it for now, so you'll know that this is our first needle to work with. Then we're going to knit front and back again. Knit front and back, increasing. And then we have 2 stitches left. Okay, so if you will now remember, knit front and back, knit 2, and repeat. Now we know you can go to your stitch marker and see how many you knit before, right after that increase. So this was the first increase, and then I've got this many stitches to knit. So if you ever lose your place on another needle, you can go back to that first one and count backwards. Take those first 2 off and remember to count 1, 2, and say, okay, now I'm on this row that has it. So this particular, or round, not row, this particular round, we are knitting in the front and back to increase, and then knit 2. So this will work on the rounds 8 and 10 and 12 later on, because they will all increase by 1 how we're doing this. So now we're knit front and back. We're going to knit 2, 1, 2, and then now we know we need to knit front and back to increase again. Oops. Go to the back. There we go. And then I have 2 left. It's perfect after you've done that first increase on stitches, and then you know the rest of them are going to be knit. All right, move on to the next one. This is my 3rd set of needles, and do the same thing. So finish your round, and then make the next row after that, the 7th round, is going to be all knit stitches. Go ahead and work until you're ready to start the 8th round, and I'll meet you back up. Pause your video, and I'll see you in a little bit. All right, we're on round 8, and we have 8 stitches on each needle, so 24 stitches. And you knit 1 round, which was row 7, and just slip the stitch over and keep it in place. Now we're going to knit 3 after that increase. So make your increase, knit front and back. Okay. And knit 1, 2, 3. So you're knitting to that first marker. Okay, so always just knit to that first marker. And if you need to go back and go, oh, how many did I do? I did 3. So slip that over and knit front and back. And knit to the end of that needle, which is 3. And repeat that on the next 2 needles and make the 9th round all knit. Okay, and I'll join you back up for the 10th round. You should have 30 stitches all the way around, so you're going to have 10 on each needle. You're going to do the same as you've been doing, except we're just adding 1 more. Again, we knit front and back of the stitch, and then we knit to that first marker, and then you can tell how many you need. You're actually knitting 4 on this round. So go ahead and do the 10th round, and then knit your 11th round all the way around, and I'll join you back up for the 12th round. The 12th round will be our last increase round, and then we'll move on to the next instructions. Okay, you should have 36 stitches going around, and we are on the 12th round, and we are going to be doing our last increase row. So we're going to knit in the front and the back, just as we've been doing, and then knit to that first marker, or knit 5. So I've got 5 stitches here, and you're going to do that all the way around. So just repeat, knitting front and the back, knit 5, and repeat until you finished all stitches in this round. Your work should be about this big. And then after that, you will stop, and I will meet you right back up and we will continue on. See you in a moment. You have done it. You're at 42 stitches, and now we're going to knit even in rounds until the work measures about 2.5 inches approximately. So when you measure from the center here outwards until 2.5, that's when we'll meet you back up. So just knit evenly across, no increases, and we'll meet you in a little bit. Pause your video. See you soon. Okay, we're ready for the ears. I've measured 2.5 inches from my stitches here down to this tip here, and I got 2.5 as the pattern states. And now we only have about 4 rows left until this head part is complete. We're ready to stuff and graft it. The stitches that you're going to need to know is how to decrease. So I'm going to go over the stitches, and then you'll need to follow the rest of the pattern. So we'll go over the first round, and you'll be able to have all the tools you need to follow the 2nd through 4th rounds. So we are on the first needle, and I've still got this stitch marker here showing me that this is that first needle. And we're going to knit 8 stitches. So knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, slip that marker, and 8. Okay, so the first stitch you're going to need to know is how to slip, slip, knit. This is a decrease. So we're going to slip knitwise this first stitch, slip knitwise the second stitch. Knitwise just means the way you go in is normally how you would knit. And then we're going to put our left needle in through the front of these 2 stitches here. All right, all the way through. And then we're knitting in the back loop here, up and over. So those 2 get knit down to 1 stitch. And then now we're going to knit 1 stitch. All right, so we're going to knit these 2 stitches together, just as we did on the blanket. That's a K2 tog. And go right in there. It was a little tight here. All right, so we've knit these 2 stitches together, and then we're going to knit 16 and continue along and knit 2 together and do another slip, slip, knit. So you're just going to repeat all the way around. I'm going to do 16. We'll just do this first round together. So I've got 1, oops. Get my next needle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Pause your video if you need to. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So there's 14 on each needle. So you had 1 from the first needle, and then all of the second needle, and then 1 from this third needle here. So that's 16. All right, so we're on to our last needle here, and we want to knit 2 together. Oops. Make sure in this free needle here, I'm not going around that. Knit those 2, knit 1, and slip, slip, knit again. So we're going to slip, slip, and then knit these 2 through the back loop together. That's a decrease. And then we're going to knit to the end. That's knit 8. And you will have 38 stitches. We started with 42. You are down to 38. And then the next row, the second round, will be knit. So you just knit across for 1 round. And then the third round will be very similar, and just follow that pattern. And I'll meet you back up after you're done with the ear shaping. Okay, you're nearly done with the head. We need to divide it onto 2 needles, and they'll have 17 stitches each. Now, before I do that, if you notice, I put on a few stitch markers here. What this is it's noting where all the decreases were for the ear shaping that you just did. You didn't need the stitch markers, but I'm just showing you where they fall. I actually have 10 stitches on these 2 needles back here that had most of that ear shaping, and then this needle here holds 14 stitches. So I need to get 17 stitches onto this needle. Even though you might be tempted to graft it and divide the stitches like this and start grafting from here, I think it's better to have it lay flat. And so this is the way I'm doing it. It doesn't state this in the pattern. This is just the way I'm doing it. All right, so I want to take a couple of stitches from here and 1 stitch from here, and that will get me 17. Okay, so one of the ways I can do this is go ahead and offload onto this needle all but the 2 that I want. So I'm going to just go ahead and move these over, leave 2 stitches on, because we want to make this front side as even as possible. Okay, so I've got all those on, and oops, I want to drop my stitch here. I'm going to just load these on this next needle here. Take that stitch marker off and load that one on. Okay, so now I have this other needle, and I can spin this around and pick it up on this end. Okay, that's 1 and 2. I have 16 on this side, and I need 1 more from this side. So let's just kind of over here with our other DPN, take that stitch off. Go ahead and take that. I'm going to go ahead and remove these stitch markers here, and these 2. There we go. I'm going to load this one back on. All right, now that I have it, instead of twisting, okay, so it came from this direction, just want to rotate it around and get it onto this end. We don't want to twist our stitches up. All right, now just double check your count. Make sure that you have 17 across. 16, 17. So we've got 17 on both ends, and this side over here where our yarn is coming out, we are going to go ahead and just cut this yarn. Okay, and then you'll need enough to graft these stitches together, usually about 3 times the length, and clip that. And we want to stuff this. Okay, so we're going to stuff this part lightly and then graft the stitches together, and then using the back stitch you're going to embroider the nose and the eyes as illustrated in your pattern for making a cat. So your eyes would be here and your nose would be here. I'm going to make this into an owl. So I'd actually want to use another technique for putting them on. So I'm not going to stuff this just yet. I want to be able to get my needle right in here, and I'm going to show you. So until then, let's just go ahead and you can put some stitch stoppers on this thing, or just let it sit here. And let's go work on the eyes and the nose first before we finish this up. To make the owl eyes, I'm inspired by this I'm a Hoot knit hat and these cute little eyes. Now, this is color stranding that's implemented into the design. You can see it inside here. But I'm going to make an eye that goes on top. Okay, and then we're going to do the embroidery on here. Now, in this video here, I actually showed how to do embroidery, and we're going to be doing that on here as well. We'll make 2 eyes, and then we'll stitch on the nose. So you're going to need the yarn for the nose, the yarn for this little eye. It looks like a little smiling eye, and then we need some yarn for this eye here. Now, you're going to need the larger needles for this because I think it covers it nicely. And I'm going to go row by row how to make the eye. You'll also need a wide-eyed tapestry needle as well. Start by casting on 3. So there's 1, 2, 3. And we're going to increase this 3 into 5. So we're going to knit front and back on the first stitch. In front, rotate to the back, and back, and now knit 1, and this last stitch, knit in front and the back. Be sure and hold on to it so it doesn't pop off. There we go. Now we've got 5 stitches on here. Turn that around, and all the second and alternate rows are going to be purl. So we're going to hold on to that, purl it. We're making a stockinette or stocking stitch on here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the third row is going to be knit 1, and then knit front and back. We're going to increase, and then knit 1, and then knit front and back, increase, and knit 1. So you should have 7 stitches, and purl the next row. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you need to pause your video, we can do that. Let me do this purl stitch. I'm sorry, I did not do it slow enough. Let's do it slow here. We're going to make sure your yarn is in the front, put your needle in the front of the stitch, yarn over that needle, and then you're pushing that stitch to the back and then letting it go from your left needle. So that's a purl stitch. Okay, the 5th row is going to be a decrease row. So we knit 1, and then we're going to slip knit. We're going to slip knitwise, and go into the front of these 2 stitches here. There we go. And then knit into the back of that loop. Okay, so that's decreased. Now knit 1, and then knit 2 together here. These 2 stitches knit together, and that's decreased, and then we knit 1. So we're back down to 5. Turn it to that wrong side and purl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And last row is number 7. We're going to decrease again, knit 1, slip knit. So slip knit through the back loop. Okay, and then we're going to knit these 2 stitches together, these last 2 stitches. And there we go. And so we have 3 stitches on here. Turn it over, and we are going to bind off purlwise. So we're going to go into this first stitch here, purl, and then purl the next stitch. Okay, and then lift this back stitch over the front. Okay, move my yarn back. I just had to move that out of the way. So purl this stitch here, and now lift your back stitch over the front, and we have that last one left. I'm just going to pull that out. Looks like I'm not in my yarn here. All right, so this is now fastened off. Pull that through, and you have that flat edge at the top and then the flat edge at the bottom, and you've got your nice round eye. So you can leave these tails in here. You can leave 1 strand long and weave 1 of them in, and you're going to use this one for sewing it onto your owl. So you'll make 2 of these, and I've already shown you here how I've sewn one of them in, one of the ends in. I've left this part to be the part I'm going to use to sew it on top of my owl here. And now we need to make the embroider stitch that goes on top, and then you can sew them on. So let's do that now. Okay, I've made my 2 eyes here, and I've got one over here to show you. We're going to have 3 stitches across. I've rotated this around to where I can see there's 3 different columns of stitches. You can see one here and here. It's kind of hard to see in this white on my camera, but you'll be able to kind of feel on it at home. Okay, so we're going to go, we've got our black thread or black yarn coming with our tapestry needle. We're going to come up through the back, and we're going to want to go up and over at an angle over here. So we come down far enough, about 2 stitches down, come up, pull that yarn through and leave a tail in the back. Now we're going to go down through this stitch that we just came out of, and then go up and at an angle, just like I was talking about here. So this little column. So we're not going to go straight over. Okay, you're picking up 2 stitches here. This would be going straight over. I want to go down and up. Okay, and then before I pull it through, take this yarn here, okay, and wrap it around. Make sure my little tail is not looping through. Okay, wrap this around the needle coming here, and then gently pull it through. Okay, and it should have a nice little eye here of a chain. You see this chain here? I'm going to make it a little longer. Okay, we're just going to pull that over to where it covers up that stitch. All right, now we're going to go back through this hole that we came out of, and we're going to go straight over, not at an angle, just go straight. Do the same thing. Go find this longer part that you just had and go around that needle and then pull it on through. Okay, so now I've tightened that up to be about the same size as this stitch, and I'm going to go down through here, right where we came out of before, and then we're going to go at an angle down. Let's see. Make sure we're coming out of the same spot here. Get an angle down, and then wrap around the needle, and then pull it on through. Here we go. All right, so now I've got this chain stitch across to make this embroidery, and sometimes I like to take my needle and kind of play with it just to make sure it's even. Okay, so that looks good. That's my little eye, and now I want to lock this in, so we're going to go down through that stitch we just came up out of, go all the way down to bring your yarn to the back, and then that locks that stitch in here. Okay, so now you have your little eye, and then you can go on the back. You want to weave this tail in, so we're going to go through this back loop on the back here and make a loop. Oops. Make a loop, don't pull it all the way through, and then go through that loop again and snug that on up. Make sure you're not pulling too tight on the front. Pull that just a little too snug. All right, now I can leave that where it is, and I can snip that part off. And then I'm going to go on the other side and weave this tail in. And I'll repeat the same process on the other eye so that you have 2 of them. So let's go through this stitch here. Leave a loop. Go through, pull it, snip that tail, and then this will just get trapped in on the back side like this. And so go ahead and make your other embroidered eye, and then we're going to stitch this on, and I'll show you how to make that nose. Okay, I've sewn this first one on so we can see how it's placed, and I'm going to take my second one and sew it on, and I'm using the back stitch. So if you are wanting to make the cat eyes and do the cat face, you can use the same technique for learning the back stitch. I'm just going to thread this on here, and my last tail was actually down here, and I'm using this tail up here, so it doesn't matter whichever one you cut off and sewn in. It's just, you're just sewing around the perimeter. So basically got my eyes kind of lined up. If if I look over here, I skipped in 2 stitches on the left here, and then I'm kind of going over these next 6 stitches. So if I skip over these 2 stitches on the left here and make sure and get it consuming kind of these 6 stitches, then I should have 1 in the middle, which is very much like how my hat was. So I'm going to go down into this stitch here. Okay, I'm going to go into the middle, and that's why I'm leaving this open, so I can stick one hand down into it, and that way I'm not sewing the back together. All right, so I'm going to go down into here. Make sure it's a little fiddly when I first get started here. All right, so I'm going to go down and up through a stitch. Okay, I'm going to go around here like that. Okay, so I'm going to call this my 1. Okay, so just because I'm coming up here, I've just basically got it locked in. Okay, make sure my eyeballs are on straight. All right, I can kind of fudge it around if I need to. Okay, so I'm going to go through, I've got my 1 here, I'm going to go back to my 2, and then I'm going to come out down here to the 3. So this is 1, I go down, and then up again, around here. I'm just staying on top of this white. Just kind of nice and loose. I'm not trying to get it super tight yet. Okay, so this is my 1. I'm going to go down to the 2 and over to the 3. So I'm going to go down here. Make sure I'm not getting inside. I'm just kind of using my fingers as a guide behind it. Make sure I'm getting all the way through that gray fabric. Have it come up. Okay, and I got that on there. So come up again, we go back and over, put my finger in. I'm going to keep it kind of 1 stitch in from the edge here. Oops, get that on here. Okay, down. Over. And when you're going a straight line for other features, you're going to want to obviously keep it from zigzagging. I'm having to go in a circle for this one, so it's a little different. So I'm going to go down again, back behind that stitch and over, and just going all the way around. Okay, so it's locking in that edge stitch. I'm just checking my eyeballs as I go. Okay, now I can kind of put my left hand in here. Okay, I'm going to go down and over. Okay, and over. So I keep basically going back on those last stitches to make sure that they're in nice and covering the that white on the eye. Okay, and so I have a little bit of black showing through here, so I'm going to go up in here where I have some room and pull this part out, because that was one of my little tails, and just kind of stuff it back in there. Okay, make it like a little pocket, and that way it's not creeping out the side here. And just continue going around this perimeter. And we're almost done. Just do a couple more stitches in the top here, and then we'll lock it in. So continue stitching on yours. I'll finish up mine, and I'll join you back to make the nose. So here is my inspiration owl over here, the I'm a Hoot knit hat, and it's showing in duplicate stitch, the little nose. It's a little harder to do on here. I was going to do in duplicate stitch, but I'm actually going to go ahead and do the back stitch, and we'll just stitch on a little nose. So we're going to put it on approximately about right here and make our little beak, our nose. And I'm just going to work across here. Let me pull through first and come up here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to come back to the 2 and over to the 3. We're going to just go knit across, or stitch across. It's not knitting. Okay, and then I've got the 1 coming up. I'm going to go down 2 and over across to that next column. Okay, I've got that, and now I'm going to go back to the 2 and over, and I'm going to go back up where I just had it instead of skipping across. Get that last stitch on there. And I'm using 2 strands held as 1 because it tends to cover up these stitches a little bit better, looks more substantial. So now I've got the start of my little beak, and I'm going to go run back across and then come down a little bit to make that beak a little pointed there. So let's see, let's go down here and up. And then we'll go down and over. Just trying to stitch on a little bit more of a substantial beak here. I'm going to go down here and back up to the middle. And over and back up. And I go back across over here. And now I have a cute little beak. Look at that. Ah, it's so cute. Okay, so it's kind of like a big heart here. Kind of like a big V stitch. And then all these extra little pieces, you can just tie them off back here and weave them in. And then they can actually be part of the stuffing. And I want to show you how to get this part down here all tied in. You've got this last tail here. So just use your tapestry needle. And you just want to work that inside. There you go. Okay, so now go ahead and stuff yours and we'll graft in this last step. All right, let's start grafting. I've got my yarn that matches the top here and want to go ahead and get this set up. So to set it up, I've already got this stuffed here. And all my stitches, if you imagine you have a right leg of the stitch and then the left leg of the stitch is of the back of it towards the inside here. I'm looking at the front. Okay, so I want to come up underneath this stitch here. So under the right leg of the stitch right here. And let that tail just hang. Okay, I'm going to give myself a generous amount of room so I don't pull it all the way out. And I want to go to this back part here and want to go under here, and this is that leg of the stitch in the back to the inside here. We're going to come up right through between. Okay, so now we've got it prepared, and we're going to get this stitch almost where we're going to pull it off, and I want to go through the middle of this stitch here, okay, from the front side. And then we're going to go to the back or middle of this next stitch. So I'm going to let this fall off, and I'm going to go through this leg here from the inside to the front. Okay, and then pull that on through. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the back and do something similar where I go through the middle of this stitch here. Okay. And then I go through the back of this next one. So I'm going to lift this one off and then go through this one here. Oops. In the middle of this stitch here. Okay. All right, now I can go to the front, and I'm going to go through the front of this stitch, pull it off, and go through the back of the next one. Okay, now we go to the back. We're going to go through this stitch here and pull it off. And then go through here. And then we're just going to repeat that all the way across. Front to the back. Front to the back. Okay, so we're going to go front to back, and then we got front to back, and we can go front and front to back. And get all those stitches in there. And then now we can just go on right back on through here and get this tucked right in. So after you weave in all the ends, you've got this beginning end for the grafting, and then you've got this middle part here, which was from that very last round that you did. So just go ahead and go on through, pull that stitch in, and you can just pull it through there and down through another stitch. Just kind of pull it through the stuffing and everything, and then this tail will just get kind of worked in. I like to go back through another stitch and just continue to just let that long piece just stay inside of the stuffing. Okay, and you'll do the same on this one, and then when you're ready, let's sew on the body of your owl. See you in a moment. All right, we're ready to sew this together. We're going to go ahead and start with the head and go to the bottom here, and we're going to be stitching across about 6 stitches. So the instructions just say to sew the base of the head to the center of the body. So I'm going to go ahead and just start by getting a solid foundation here. I'm going to start by getting a knot, make a loop, and make a knot so this is secure. Okay, and then I'm going to go through the base, and we want to find the center so we can fold our points together and fold these points together, and then we find the base, go right up through the tip here, and now we know where that is. Okay, and I'm going to go over about 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, because I'm going to go 6 across. And let's make it, oops, I'm going to go down. Let's go down from here because this yarn is on the top. So we're going down through here, pull it through, and I'm going to leave this strand out so I can pull that in later. Okay, so I'm going to be making it the face go to where this point is here. Okay, so it's right in the center. And then let's kind of flip this over. And then we're just going to go sew across and do a back stitch. This will be a nice foundation here. So we'll do the back stitch. It's coming up through 1 as we did earlier. We're going to go back through 2, down into that head and kind of grip on to a good nice stitch here. So let's go down here, pull over about a stitch, and then go over 3. So this is my 1, we go 2, and then up through 3. Okay, now I'm going to go down where that 1 stitch was. Okay, go up and under. There's that 1 here going down. My 2 is going down where the old one was coming up, and then I'm going to go 3, so I'm going over. We're just going straight across this way. Pull that on through. Okay, go down and come up. This is 3. Go down, come up. 4. Down, come up. 5, down, and come up, back up where this last one is. 6, and I'm going to go through that last stitch again, and let's just come back up on the other side where the head is. Okay. So we can see how that is holding on. Looks like it's holding on pretty good. Let's go back down. I'll show you how you would go back through that again. Go down. Okay, so we've got the 1 stitch. We're going to work in the opposite direction. I'm going to go down here and over, down and over. Down and over, and down and over. And I'm just going to go down one more time here and up through the top. Okay, so that is sewn on really well. It is not going to go anywhere. And then we have this other stitch that needs to come through. So we can actually go ahead and tie these together. And make a square knot. And go ahead and clip these. And now I can take my tails and weave them in here, or I can just put them right up into this head, which is really convenient. And just thread those through my tapestry needle at the same time. And pull it on through. And go through one more stitch. I just leave the eye of that needle out. Get those tails in there. And pull it on through. And then you can clip them if they're pulled out, but it looks like it's done. Oh my gosh, look at this cute owl lovey. So cute. Who, me? Yes. And it looks so cute with this hat too. I hope you've enjoyed making your Knit Lovey today, and I hope it's in an owl, but if not, it's a kitty or whatever you made. Be sure and tag me on social media, tag Your Inspirations and Good Knit Kisses, and let us know what you made. On behalf of Your Inspirations and Good Knit Kisses, I'm your host, Kristen, wishing you happy knitting. Bye-bye.